how is marketing different, or is it different if you're representing a brand that maybe markets more toward women, more toward men, or are you trying to bring in maybe those differences more toward the middle? Like, how do you approach those different brands?
So my career started in consumer insights, which is not a typically familiar topic when you talk about marketing, although it is like the foundation of how marketing is executed. You have to understand consumers. And when I got my MBA in 2008, it was a recession, a big one.
Yes, it was.
And I bring that up for a reason because while I was getting my MBA and I had that trajectory of, go up meet a CMO one day of a corporation. And so they typically teach you to go into brand management and you just start there, right? And work your way up. But I had a tough time, quite frankly, landing a role. I was living in Miami at the time. The world was crashing. And I didn't have a lot of exposure, access to other corporations that were, big corporations around the world. So in short, an opportunity landed for me to go into consumer insights. And at first I was like, oh, I'm comparing myself to my colleagues who are doing this. And there was nothing wrong with consumer insights, just no one really talked about it. I would say that was the best decision of my career because I spent 7 years deeply involved with understanding consumers, empathy, consumers from global to the United States who are hyper focused on the nuances of Hispanic, right? I spent years studying that and allowing and being a consultant to many brands on how they need to evolve their brands
Mhm.
or their products or their
Yes.
services, right? And so when you spend many years doing that, deep empathy and not just observing, I would ask questions, right? I would get into the markets. And so that has enabled me to think about every brand differently. I don't just come in as a business person. I'm coming in with the empathy and the understanding. And so when I worked on Gillette, use that example. Yes, it's male, but I had to think about, well, we were building out actually at that time, this is many years ago, 2009, we were building out skincare for Gillette. So at that point, it was just razors. And we were starting to work through some skincare, shampoos and face and all of that. And I had to go into it and sorry for the men who are going to hear this next part. A lot of men don't really talk about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
They just generally hadn't, back
Right.
especially,
Right.
2009. And I remember like it was yesterday, I created this study where I said, okay, let's correlate skincare to a starting five lineup of a basketball team. Okay, we can talk about a point guard and, we can talk about that. All right, so who's going to be in this position? Is your soap in this position? So I had to think about the ways in
To
which
make it
I could get
relatable.
certain
Yeah.
demographics to talk about
Yeah.
things.
I like
And it
that.
was so fun.
I like
It
that.
was it was fun because it allowed me to again enter into their world and say, all right, I know that you generally, think about the starting five of the Miami Heat or another basketball team, right? So where would you put this as far as in your skincare regimen? Like, who's the lead? Is it your shampoo? Is it your face care? And so that was just one example, and there's many others where, in order to unearth some insights and drive product development and innovation, we had to go deeper into how do we understand the audience in which we're trying to extract information from. And so that's applicable for men and women. So I've worked, yes, across a lot of different categories. I would tell you as a brand marketer, I never worked on anything I couldn't relate to.
Oh, that's
Now,
interesting. Yeah.
that doesn't mean I always directly used it, but I thought, yeah, I've interacted with men before. I have a father that was around, right? So I can understand how to think about skincare for men. Um, or even with Botox, when I worked on Botox at the time, I was relatively young and I wasn't at all thinking about using it. But I had to put myself in the mindset of, you know what? Well, I lived in Miami. It was a lot.
There's a lot of Botox in Miami.
It was a lot used there. And where our focus was with Botox at the time, and again, just to age myself, I was around 24, 25 working on it. I had to go back into my grad school days, living in Miami, and thinking about the women that I would interact with, our focus at the time was for anti-aging, which is, and I'm a consumer of Botox today, by the way. So there's no taboo there. But I had to think about, okay, we're focused on anti-aging. We're focusing on women who are, perhaps preparing for their kids' graduation. They want to, look refreshed and et cetera, right? So I had to put myself in their shoes and think about how to best market to that group. And so that's just the basis of how I navigate. And you'll see correlations in my life and my corporate life as well, is that deeper understanding of people, asking the questions, getting uncomfortable, right, to ask questions. And then that allows me to be pretty successful. And I tell folks I can market anything. Dog food, I've done it. Ice cream, I'm lactose intolerant, but I can gather enough insight on how to, uh, to to extract information from that audience and apply that towards the business.
I like that.